Hello guys, I am Satyam and you are here on our one and all channel Satyam Ideal Learning. And guys, our today's topic is about fertilization and post-fertilization changes. Okay, so we will be discussing about what is fertilization and what are the changes which occur after fertilization. Post-fertilization means after, and fertilization we will be discussing. So what are the changes that occurs after the fertilization and what is fertilization we will be discussing in our today's lecture. So start guys, we will be discussing about fertilization first. Now you have to take your copy as well as pen, and these are the notes and you have to copy it down, you have to write it, and as I am explaining now. Fertilization, what is the process? As we define the fertilization process, it is the process by which the male gametes fuses with the female gamete and then the zygote will be formed. Okay, so fertilization is the process of producing a zygote by the fusion of male and female gametes. Okay, clear this thing? Now the zygote will grow into an embryo, and when we will be discussing about plants, so the embryo will grow into a seedling and then the seedling will grow into a plant. So seedling will grow into a plant. Now let's discuss how fertilization occurs. Each pollen grain contains a vegetative bud and two male gametes. I've already told you guys what is pollination, what are the agents of pollination, and what is artificial pollination. So in pollen grains, you know na, that the pollen grains transfer from the anther to the stigma. So what does pollen grain contain? The pollen grain contains the vegetative buds and the two male gametes. Okay, so it contains vegetative bud and two male gametes. We already know two male gametes and vegetative bud, and it is releasing. The pollen grains are being released by the anthers. And anthers, filaments, which forms the stamen. It is the male reproductive organ. Okay, so each pollen grain contains what? A vegetative bud and two male gametes. Okay, these are the three things that a pollen grain contains. Now what will happen? The pollen grain will go from the anther to the stigma of the plant, and when it reaches the stigma of the plant, then what it do, we will be discussing about that also. See, after pollen reaches stigma, vegetative bud forms pollen tube. In the diagram you can see guys that, see, at the top of the stigma you will see small pollen grains are there, and then these pollen grains will produce the vegetative bud. I have told you now that there are three things in the pollen grains: two male gametes and one is vegetative bud. Now what is the function of the vegetative bud in the pollen? So the vegetative bud will form a long tube which is known as pollen tube. So it will form like a long tube, and it will go through the style. Okay, you know na, that there is stigma, and stigma is there, and then the style is there, and then the ovary is there. Okay, these things you know. Now so it will go like this way, and it will come to the ovule. Okay, and at the bottom of the ovule, there is the small hole. There is a small portion through which the male gametes, the two male gametes, will enter in it. Like this way I am making. This is a pollen grain, and the pollen tube is coming, and it will wait like this way, and the pollen and the male gametes which are inside the pollen tube will enter in the ovule, and one of the male gametes, now see, This thing you have to listen it very carefully, guys. This is very important. See, after pollen grains reaches stigma, vegetative bud forms pollen tube and gamete passes in ovule through micropyle. This hole from which the gametes, the male gametes are passing inside the ovule is known as micropyle. This hole, okay guys, there is a portion through which the male gametes enter inside the ovule, and this portion is known as the micropyle. Okay, now see, micropyle, and one gamete fuses with egg cell. In the ovule there are egg cells. These are the female gametes. Egg cells are the female gametes, and the male gametes, one of the male gametes, I have told you that there are two male gametes total. Now one of the male gamete, what will do? It will fuse with the egg cell. It will fuse with the egg cell inside the ovule. Like this is the egg cell, and it will fuse with the egg cell which is inside the ovule, and it is the female gamete. Then when they will fuse, they both will fuse. Then what will happen? The zygote will form. Okay, and this is known as fertilization, guys. When the fusion of the male gamete means the male gamete has come, the fusion of the male gamete and the female gamete is egg cell. When the fusion will occur, then the zygote will be formed, and this is known as, guys, fertilization. Okay, now what will happen? And the other male gamete what will do? Now the other male gamete will fuse to the other cells in the ovule. In the ovule there are many other cells also. We will be discussing in the 9th class it is. Okay, so the other cells. So the another male gamete will fuse with the other cells which are inside the ovule rather than this cell, this egg cell. Okay, all the other cells are there, and the other male gamete will fuse with them, and then what it forms? See, now see, and one male gamete fuses with egg cell and forms zygote, and the other gamete fuses with other cells within ovule to form the food store of seed. Okay, sorry guys, of seed. Food store of seed. To form what? To form the food store of the seed, the other male gamete which has been come from the pollen tube will fuse with the other cells which are inside the ovule, which are within the ovule. Okay, so, and forms zygote, and the other gamete fuses with the other cells within ovule to form the food store of seed, because seed need food and the ovule will only form seed. So the seed need food, that is why they are formed as the food store for the seed. Okay, and the zygote has been formed by the fusion of the egg cell and the male gamete, one of the male gamete, and the second male gamete, and the other cells within the ovule will be fused up, and then they will form the food store of food. Okay, now after fertilization, now what happens after fertilization? So as we will be discussing now about post fertilization changes. Okay, so we have already discussed about the food store of the seed, how it is been formed, and the zygote also. Okay, and the zygote will form now embryo. Clear this thing? Now after fertilization, what occurs? After fertilization, ovule will develop into the seed. Ovule will develop into the seed, and ovary into fruit, and the ovary into fruit. So this ovary will develop into fruit that we eat, and the ovule will develop into the seed that we leave it, we disperse it. Okay, so animals, birds, all eat food, all eat fruit, so they also disperse seeds also. Okay, now ovary into fruit. The zygote grows into embryo. Now the zygote will form embryo, but the embryo is in the dormant stage, guys. Dormant means it is inactive. Okay, it is inactive. Do you know if a fruit doesn't ripe, what happens? First of all, I have to tell you that when the fruit has been formed and the seed also has been formed and the embryo has also been formed. Now what happens? Then the sepals, petals, stigma, stamen will fall off, will wither off. But at most of this, at sometimes, like in brinjal and tomato, you know, there are some green things which are at green leaves type, which are at the top of the tomato or brinjal. These are the sepals. Sometimes they persist. Okay, sometimes the sepal persist on the fruit. Okay, so what withers off? Petals withers off, sometimes sepals also withers off, and the stigma, stamen, these all will wither off, means they will fall off, and the fruit will be there, the seed will be there inside it. And now what happens? You know, na, when there is a unripe fruit, when there is a unripe fruit, then it looks green in color, and it is sour also. It is sour, bitter also. Okay, so it is bitter in taste also. Why it is bitter and why it is green? To repel the fruit eating animals. It is green and bitter in taste because so that it can repel the fruit eating animals. And when it ripens up, it becomes the color also changes according, like the mango will have the yellow color, and the fruit also looks very nice. And then the fruit eating animals come. The fruit eating animals are attracted by its colors, and it is sweet also. Okay, and now what will happen? The fruit eating animals will eat the food, and now what they will do with the seed? So they will disperse seed. They will leave the seed on the ground. Okay, so we also split the seeds, no? So when we take the seed, we will split the seed. Okay, so that it can dispersed far away. Okay, with the help of animals, birds. Now embryo consists of radicle. Now what does the embryo consist? These things that I have told you was of the post fertilization, and now I am going to tell you about the embryo. Embryo consists of radicle and plumule. Plumule and radicle it consists of, and one or two cotyledon. Cotyledon are also known as seed leaves. Okay, so cotyledon are also known as seed leaf. And what does embryo consist of? Embryo consists of radicle and plumule and one or two cotyledons. Now the embryo lies dormant, means inactive, in the seed. In the seed, it is dormant in stage. Okay, so it is inactive until conditions are favorable. Until the conditions are favorable, the embryo remains dormant. Now, until the conditions are favorable for germination. Now, what is the process of germination? See, what is the process of germination? Germination is the process by which the dormant embryo becomes active. The dormant embryo becomes active and grows into a seedling, and then this seedling will give rise to the root and shoot. How it gives rise? From the radicle, the root arises, and from the plumule, the shoot arises. Are you getting my point, guys? So under favorable condition, what happens? See, wait a second, guys. Under favorable condition, radicle under favorable condition, the radicle give rise to root and the plumule give rise to shoot. Okay, so what happens in the germination? Germination is the process by which the dormant embryo means inactive embryo sorry guys, the inactive embryo will grow into a seedling. It will become active and it will grow into a seedling, and then the seedling will grow into a plant by forming the root with the help of radicle and shoot with the help of plumule, and it will take the food from the cotyledon. Cotyledon has stored food, and it will take the food from the cotyledon, and then it will grow, it will rise up. The root will rise from down and the shoot will rise from up, and this is how the fertilization and post-fertilization changes are over. So thank you guys, and bye bye. We will meet in the next time very soon.